Toyota, Honda, and Nissan are ramping up their EV production. New hybrid models are being developed to appeal to consumers who aren't ready for fully electric cars. Investments in solid-state batteries could give Japan an edge in the next generation of EVs. U.S. automakers are now facing even more competition from Chinese brands entering the market. Europe may impose tariffs on Chinese car imports to protect local manufacturers. The EV race is accelerating, with China currently leading the charge. The rise of China as the world's leading car exporter is more than just a business story. It's a sign of shifting economic power. As China dominates the EV market and expands its global footprint, traditional automakers must adapt or risk being left behind. What do you think? Will China continue its unstoppable rise, or will Japan and the West find a way to reclaim their dominance? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights into the biggest shifts in the automotive world. Key takeaways: China is now the world's top car exporter, surpassing Japan. The success is driven by low-cost manufacturing, EV dominance, and aggressive expansion. Japan and Western automakers must adapt or risk losing market share. If you found this analysis insightful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more breaking news on the global automotive industry. In a dramatic turn of events, China has officially surpassed Japan to become the world's largest car exporter. A milestone that not only shakes up the global automotive industry, but also signals a shift in economic power. What led to this unprecedented rise? How did China, a country once known for manufacturing low-cost vehicles, manage to outpace the automotive giant Japan? And what does this mean for the future of car production worldwide? Stay with us as we uncover the full story behind China's automotive revolution. For decades, Japan has been synonymous with high-quality cars, with brands like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan leading the industry. But in 2023, for the first time ever, China overtook Japan, shipping more vehicles overseas than any other country. This shift is not just about numbers. It represents a massive transformation in the global auto market. The numbers speak for themselves. In 2022, Japan exported 3.5 million cars, holding its dominant position in the market. Meanwhile, China was closing in fast with 3.3 million units shipped abroad. By 2023, China surged ahead, exporting 4.1 million vehicles compared to Japan's 3.5 million. In early 2024, data confirmed that China has maintained its lead, setting a new record in global exports. But the question remains, how did China pull this off? The answer lies in a combination of strategic government policies, aggressive market expansion, and the rise of electric vehicles, EVs. Just 30 years ago, China was barely producing cars for its domestic market, let alone exporting them. The few cars made in China were either outdated Soviet-style models or heavily dependent on foreign technology. So how did China transition from being a small player to the world's biggest car exporter? Before the 1990s, China relied on state-run car manufacturers that produced outdated vehicles with minimal technological advancements. In the 2000s, China opened up its auto industry, allowing joint ventures with global automakers like Volkswagen, General Motors, and Toyota. By the 2010s, China had built an enormous manufacturing infrastructure, giving birth to brands like BYD, Geely, and SAIC. One of the biggest reasons China was able to surpass Japan in car exports is its aggressive push into electric vehicles, EVs. While Western nations debated the transition, China went all in. Government policies, heavy investments, and technological advancements helped Chinese automakers dominate the EV industry. By 2023, nearly 60% of China's car exports were electric vehicles. This is a stark contrast to Japan, which still relies heavily on gasoline-powered cars. But why is this important? Because the future of the automotive industry is electric, and China is positioning itself as the global leader. While Japan built its automotive empire on a foundation of quality, reliability, and innovation, China played a different game. Instead of competing directly, it took a high-volume, cost-effective approach, and that allowed it to flood the global market with affordable vehicles. Let's break down the 4 major factors behind China's success. China has the world's most advanced and cost-efficient car manufacturing plants, producing vehicles at a fraction of the cost compared to Western automakers. The Chinese government provides heavy subsidies to car manufacturers, particularly those producing electric vehicles. This allows Chinese brands to sell cheaper cars while maintaining profitability. Additionally, state-backed investments have given companies like BYD, NIO, and Geely a competitive edge over their Western counterparts. China is home to over 70% of the world's battery production for EVs, thanks to companies like CATL and BYD. While Japan's Toyota focused on hybrid technology, China went straight to fully electric vehicles, allowing them to leapfrog traditional automakers. The result? Lower costs and better efficiency, making Chinese EVs more attractive to global buyers. Instead of relying solely on Western markets, China aggressively expanded into Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe. Countries like Brazil, Mexico, and South Africa now import thousands of Chinese cars monthly. Even in Europe, Chinese EVs are gaining traction due to their lower price points compared to Tesla and German brands. Chinese automakers are striking deals with global dealerships and rental companies, increasing their market presence. Unlike Japanese brands, which rely on reputation, China is using tech-driven marketing, influencer campaigns, and aggressive pricing strategies to attract new customers. But here's the real kicker. China isn't just exporting cheap cars anymore. It's now producing high-quality, tech-packed vehicles that are challenging Western automakers head-on. With China's rise, Japan is now at a crossroads. Will it continue to rely on traditional vehicles, or will it accelerate its shift toward electric mobility? The future of the auto industry depends on the next few years. As China cements its position as the world's leading car exporter, the ripple effects of this shift are being felt across the global automotive industry. Traditional powerhouses like Japan, the United States, and Germany are being forced to rethink their strategies, while emerging markets are increasingly turning to Chinese automakers for affordable, cutting-edge vehicles. But what exactly does this mean for the world economy? What are the consequences for traditional automakers? And how will global governments respond to this massive shift in the balance of power? The rise of China in the automotive sector has been nothing short of extraordinary. Just 2 decades ago, the notion of Chinese cars being a dominant force on the international stage would have been unthinkable. Today, however, Chinese automakers are not only competing with, but in many cases surpassing their Western and Japanese counterparts in key areas like electric vehicle technology, cost efficiency, and production capacity. One of the major consequences of China's rise in the auto industry is the increasing pressure on traditional automakers to adapt or risk obsolescence. Japanese manufacturers, long known for their meticulous craftsmanship, reliability, and fuel-efficient internal combustion engines, are now struggling to keep up with China's aggressive push into the electric vehicle market. Toyota, for instance, was once at the forefront of hybrid technology, pioneering the Prius and solidifying itself as a leader in fuel-efficient vehicles. But its hesitation to fully commit to electric vehicles in the early 2010s has allowed Chinese companies like BYD, NIO, and XPeng to surge ahead in EV development. While Toyota, Honda and Nissan have made efforts to expand their EV production, they are still playing catch-up. Meanwhile, China is not slowing down. The government continues to provide heavy subsidies and incentives to Chinese automakers, allowing them to lower their production costs and offer vehicles at prices that are nearly impossible for Western and Japanese companies to match. At the same time, China's dominance in battery technology has given it an enormous advantage over traditional automakers. China currently produces over 70% of the world's lithium-ion batteries, a critical component in electric vehicle production. Companies like KATL and BYD have made massive advances in battery efficiency, longevity, and cost reduction, further solidifying China's grip on the EV industry. For Western and Japanese automakers, this represents a major challenge. The reliance on Chinese-made batteries means that even American and European electric vehicles are indirectly dependent on China. Tesla, for example, sources a significant portion of its batteries from CATL, while European automakers like Volkswagen and BMW have also turned to Chinese suppliers. This supply chain dependency creates a paradox. While the West seeks to compete with China in the EV market, it still relies heavily on Chinese-made components to do so. This has sparked discussions in both the United States and Europe about reshoring battery production and reducing reliance on Chinese supply chains. In response, countries like the United States have passed legislation aimed at boosting domestic EV production. The Inflation Reduction Act, signed into law in 2022, includes provisions for increasing EV subsidies, incentivizing American-made battery production, and reducing reliance on Chinese imports. Similarly, the European Union has begun discussing tariffs and trade barriers to prevent Chinese automakers from flooding the European market with low-cost EVs. But China's strategy extends beyond just selling vehicles. It is aggressively expanding its presence in emerging markets across Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Unlike Western automakers, which often focus primarily on developed markets, China has recognized the massive potential in these regions. Countries like Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, and Indonesia have become major buyers of Chinese-made vehicles, attracted by their affordability and advanced technology. Unlike Western automakers, which traditionally import finished vehicles, China has also focused on building factories in these countries, further embedding itself into their economies. By doing so, it not only reduces production costs, but also avoids tariffs that might otherwise hinder its market expansion. This strategy has put Japanese automakers at a disadvantage, particularly in regions where Toyota and Honda once held strong market dominance. Toyota, for instance, has historically been the go-to brand in Southeast Asia, known for its reliable and fuel-efficient cars. However, as fuel prices continue to rise, consumers in these regions are beginning to favor affordable EVs, a market segment where China excels. At the same time, the competition between China and Western automakers is intensifying in Europe. In 2023, Chinese EV exports to Europe hit record highs, prompting concerns among European policymakers. Brands like BYD, MG, owned by China's SAIC, and NIO have made significant inroads into the European market, offering vehicles that undercut traditional German and French automakers in price. European governments are now weighing potential tariffs on Chinese EVs, fearing that the influx of cheaper Chinese cars could harm local automakers like Volkswagen, Renault, and BMW. However, any aggressive trade restrictions could backfire, as China remains a crucial export destination for European automakers. Volkswagen, for instance, still sells millions of cars in China annually and relies heavily on the Chinese market for its profits. As a result, Europe finds itself in a delicate balancing act, protecting its own auto industry without provoking a trade war with China. Meanwhile, the United States has taken a more confrontational approach. The Biden administration has increased scrutiny of Chinese automotive investments, raised concerns about national security risks related to Chinese EVs, and imposed stricter import regulations on Chinese-made vehicles. Some American lawmakers have even proposed banning Chinese-made EVs from entering the U.S. market altogether. However, despite these efforts, American automakers still struggle to compete with Chinese companies when it comes to affordability. While companies like Ford, GM, and Tesla have invested billions into EV production, their vehicles often remain significantly more expensive than their Chinese counterparts. This price gap is one of the biggest reasons why China's dominance in the EV sector is likely to continue growing. Even if tariffs are imposed, the sheer cost advantage of Chinese-made EVs makes them appealing to consumers in price-sensitive markets. Looking ahead, the battle for automotive supremacy is far from over. Japan is now ramping up its EV production in a bid to regain lost ground, but it may take years before Japanese automakers can match China's output. Meanwhile, the United States and Europe are scrambling to strengthen their domestic EV industries, but they continue to face challenges related to cost, supply chain logistics, and infrastructure. At the same time, China shows no signs of slowing down. With massive government backing, state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities, and a global expansion strategy that is proving highly effective, it is well positioned to continue its dominance in the automotive sector for the foreseeable future. The implications of this power shift extend beyond just the auto industry. As China gains more control over battery production, raw materials, and vehicle exports, it is also shaping the future of transportation worldwide. Countries that fail to adapt to this changing landscape risk falling behind in an industry that is rapidly evolving. So, what happens next? Will Japan and Western automakers find a way to compete with China's dominance? Will new trade policies and tariffs slow China's expansion? Or will Chinese automakers continue to conquer new markets despite rising tensions? One thing is certain. The global automotive industry is undergoing its biggest transformation in decades, and China is leading the charge. The question is, can anyone catch up? As China continues its meteoric rise in the automotive industry, one thing is clear. The global balance of power in car manufacturing and exports has shifted. No longer just a producer of cheap, low-quality vehicles, China is now at the forefront of electric vehicle, EV, technology, battery production, and large-scale automotive exports. But what does this mean for the future of the global auto industry? How will traditional automotive powerhouses like Japan, Germany, and the United States respond? And will China face economic and political roadblocks that could threaten its dominance? To fully understand the long-term consequences of China overtaking Japan as the world's top car exporter, we must examine three key factors: the global response to China's expansion, China's own challenges in sustaining its growth, and the future of electric mobility. The global response: countries fight back against China's expansion. The sheer speed of China's expansion in the automotive market has triggered alarm bells among global policymakers, particularly in the United States and Europe. While China's dominance may seem unstoppable, other countries are beginning to take aggressive countermeasures to slow down or limit Chinese influence in the automotive sector. Trade wars and tariffs. Will protectionism slow China down? Over the past 2 years, Western nations have grown increasingly wary of China's ability to flood global markets with low-cost electric vehicles. This has led to discussions of trade barriers and tariffs aimed at protecting domestic automakers. The European Union is currently debating the implementation of steep tariffs on Chinese EV imports, fearing that European automakers like Volkswagen, Renault, and BMW cannot compete with China's lower production costs. In the United States, policymakers have raised national security concerns about Chinese EVs, warning that vehicles equipped with Chinese-made software and AI systems could pose cybersecurity risks. Some American lawmakers have called for a total ban on Chinese-made EVs in the U.S. market, arguing that the country needs to protect its domestic auto industry and supply chains. However, while tariffs and trade barriers may slow China's expansion, they cannot stop it entirely. Many Chinese automakers are circumventing restrictions by building factories overseas, particularly in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and parts of Europe. By manufacturing cars closer to their target markets, they reduce transportation costs and avoid certain tariffs. This means that even if Western nations impose restrictions, China will likely continue its dominance by shifting production strategies rather than pulling back. The response from Japan: can Toyota, Honda, and Nissan fight back? For decades, Japan set the gold standard for automobile manufacturing. Toyota's hybrid technology, Nissan's innovations, and Honda's reliability made Japanese cars among the most respected in the world. But today, Japan faces an existential crisis. Either it catches up with China in EV production or risks losing its market position entirely. Toyota has announced massive investments in EV production, including plans to develop solid-state batteries, which could revolutionize electric mobility by offering faster charging times and longer battery life. Honda and Nissan are following suit, announcing plans to expand their EV lineups and increase their global market reach. Japan is also strengthening trade partnerships with countries like India and Southeast Asian nations to counterbalance China's influence. But is this enough? Critics argue that Japan reacted too slowly to the EV revolution, allowing China to take the lead. Even as Japanese automakers increase EV production, they still lag behind Chinese firms in battery technology, production speed, and affordability. Some analysts believe that Toyota and Honda's future survival depends on merging with or acquiring Chinese EV technology rather than trying to develop it independently. 3. The role of the United States. Can American automakers compete? The U.S. has long been a global leader in car manufacturing, with brands like Ford, General Motors, and Tesla shaping the industry. However, the rise of China presents a new and unprecedented challenge. While Tesla remains a dominant player in the EV market, even it relies heavily on Chinese battery suppliers. General Motors and Ford are making major EV investments but still struggle with high production costs compared to their Chinese counterparts. The Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S. includes policies aimed at boosting domestic EV production and reducing reliance on Chinese-made components. Despite these efforts, Chinese automakers continue to expand their presence in global markets at an unprecedented pace. The U.S. faces an uphill battle in trying to limit China's influence without damaging its own economy in the process. China's internal challenges: can it sustain its growth? While China's rise in the auto industry seems unstoppable, the country faces its own set of challenges that could threaten its dominance in the coming years. Overproduction and the risk of a market crash. One of the biggest concerns for China's auto industry is overproduction. In recent years, Chinese automakers have ramped up production at breakneck speed, creating a massive surplus of vehicles. While demand for EVs remains strong, there are signs that China might be producing more cars than the market can absorb. Some analysts warn that if sales slow down, China could face a market crash similar to what happened in the real estate sector. To prevent this, China must balance production with sustainable demand, ensuring that its auto industry does not collapse under its own weight. Political and economic pressures. China's government heavily supports its auto industry through subsidies and incentives. However, with rising tensions with the West, some Chinese companies could lose access to key export markets. Geopolitical conflicts, trade sanctions, or global economic slowdowns could impact China's ability to export vehicles. If Western nations impose stricter trade restrictions, Chinese automakers might be forced to focus solely on domestic sales, limiting their growth potential. The future of electric mobility, what comes next? The global auto industry is undergoing its biggest transformation in history. As the internal combustion engine era fades, electric mobility is taking over, and China is leading the charge. But what does the future hold? The EV market will continue expanding despite economic uncertainties. The EV revolution is here to stay. More governments are banning gasoline cars, and consumers are increasingly demanding greener alternatives. China will continue dominating EV sales, with projections showing that Chinese automakers could control over 40% of the global EV market by 2030. Battery advancements will make EVs even more efficient, with China maintaining a strong lead in battery production. Self-driving cars and AI integration. Another huge shift in the auto industry is the rise of self-driving cars and AI-powered vehicles. Chinese firms like Baidu and NIO are making massive investments in autonomous driving technology. While Tesla remains the biggest name in self-driving innovation, Chinese firms are catching up quickly. This raises an important question. Will Chinese AI-powered vehicles dominate the roads in the next decade? And if so, what will this mean for traditional automakers? Final thoughts. The auto industry's uncertain future, the rise of China as the world's top car exporter, is more than just a shift in market dominance. It's a complete transformation of the global auto industry. Japan and the West must adapt or be left behind. China's growth shows no signs of stopping, but internal challenges could slow it down. The future of transportation will be electric, AI-driven, and heavily influenced by China. So the final question is, can Japan, the U.S., and Europe catch up? Or is China destined to be the undisputed king of the global auto industry? Only time will tell. What do you think? Will China continue its dominance, or will other countries fight back? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more breaking news on the future of the auto industry.